We're here to talk about the real estate market in Silicon Valley and then the Greater Bay Area, which includes 13 counties and 5 regions. We'll come back to this URL at the end. Here are the data slides that we're going to be going over. I am missing one slide that I normally have. I had a major issue that I was able to mostly recover from last night in processing the data. I also want to point out the market is completely different now than it was just a few months ago, and we'll see that as we get into the data. If you're a first-time person, this is a little bit of an explanation and overview. For those that are repeat visitors in the future, you can skip and get right into the first data slide. There's the index at the bottom. Here's a summary of the data that we're going to be looking at. Historically, i.e. just the last several weeks, several months, the active inventory has been in an absolute shortage. Now you can see that we're coming up to pretty much near levels. And part of the reason for that is the inventory levels dropped so dramatically at the end of the year. There's not much variation. Then the next table here is the number of offers accepted compared to the 10-year median, and it's been all blue, but now look how much of this is starting to come up right at 100%. You're starting to get more offers, which instead of fewer, which is helping the marketplace. Then you look at the DUI. This used to be fairly red or a lot redder than it is now, and now it's all blue. And that's important because that's the speed of the marketplace. This is the actual DUI now, just what is the DUI, days on sold inventory currently. And you have the one outlier, really outlier here on the San Mateo County coast, where it's just slow, 236 days to sell out the inventory. That's pretty high. Days on market, 75th percentile. This used to be all pink. Now it's starting to be mostly white with a little bit of blue. Clearly, the sellers are taking longer time to sell their property. Price adjustments are coming up. They're all starting to be fairly significant, and I do need to readjust this. In fact, if anyone has any suggestions, any changes they'd like to see, I'll probably be updating the presentation fairly significantly over the holiday. Then you have your ask price reductions, the frequency of it. You're getting areas with 20% price reductions, 38%, 29%. You're starting to get a lot more price reductions as the time on the market starts going up. The magnitude of overbidding is down quite a bit. The frequency of overbidding, that lags behind. So it's still fairly pink, but is even down a little bit. And then appreciation and the current sold prices have nothing to do with the speed of the marketplace. It's just which areas have had the most appreciation, which areas have had the least, and which are the most expensive. Here's the first heat map, and you can see that the outlying areas, the Alameda counties and the South Santa Clara counties are your red zones, which is basically saying that with the pandemic, people are willing to commute further and because they're getting more house for their money, and they don't see the daily commute as a big of a hurdle as it used to be, and therefore they're getting a lot more house with not the associated negative. And the areas close to the job centers are the areas that used to have a huge premium that are no longer collecting that premium, so they've had the least amount of activity. Here's the number of offers accepted, and you can see across the board it's blue. And it's almost interesting. It's sort of the reverse, because the areas that are close to the job centers are actually getting closer to 100% of their number of offers. Is that the first indication that people are now starting to come back to get close to work, and therefore there's more offers being accepted close to work? Here's the DUI. Then this is comparing the speed of the market to the 10-year normal. The market's definitely still slower at the center of the job centers. It's more normal on the outlying areas. Here's your raw count of days on sold inventory. This is the first time we're getting away with comparing it to the 10-year median, and we're just looking at the numbers today. So even though the market slowed down quite a bit, it's still a fast-paced marketplace. In Santa Clara County, a lot of the areas would sell out of inventory in 3 weeks. Now, some of the areas are getting up around 60 days. So you either are in the fast market, which are the affordable areas, Santa Teresa through Sunnyvale, basically geographically and in price point. When you start getting into more expensive areas like Saratoga, Los Gatos, Los Altos, Palo Alto, now you have 2 months of unsold inventory. And if you get down to South County and downtown San Jose and South San Jose, either the real affordable areas or the one affordable area that's less convenient, you're starting to have a lot of more inventory. You go up in San Mateo County and you're all over the place. The coast is 236 days. The expensive areas are 100 days. Redwood City, the Bay Cities, basically the cities close to, are basically maybe average at 27 days of unsold inventory. So that's a fairly fast marketplace. Anything under 40 days, I consider to be favoring the seller. You jump up into Alameda County, and they're basically from 3 to 4 weeks for the bulk of that area. Oakland's quite a bit longer at 57 days. Now you're looking at time on the market. And the nice advantage of this slide, it's a lot easier to understand. It's not looking at ratios of anything. It's simply looking at the long typical seller, the seller that's successful but doesn't sell right away. How long are they taking to sell their properties? And you can see in Santa Clara County, we have a fast of 2 weeks in Cupertino and Sunnyvale to a slow of basically 6 weeks in East San Jose. A fair amount of fluctuation. In San Mateo County, we're going basically from, call it 5 weeks at 35 days, more or less, up to basically 12 weeks at 84 days. Sort of a very long, big range and a slower marketplace. Jumping down to Alameda County, you're going from 3 weeks to 7 weeks. You got a little bit more range, a little bit longer than it has been. And this is a good benchmark. It does take a little time, though, for those days on market to increase after the market has shifted. So the fact that this is shifting is an indication the market shifted a little while ago. Here's your price reductions. Again, this is one of the changes I want to make. I thought this was a tighter metric than it apparently is, but you can see that the holdouts here are Cupertino, Sunnyvale, where sellers are getting 0.1% more than their asking price, and in Fremont, they're getting exactly their asking price. Now, when you look at these numbers and maybe say they average around 1.5%, that may sound like not much of a price reduction. But the reason that's still significant is a large percentage of the sellers don't do any price reduction whatsoever. And so that 1.5% price reduction, if it's focused over 15% of your sellers, that's the sellers that are taking the price reduction are taking a 10% price reduction. Now, here's the frequency of overbidding. And where is the frequency of overbidding? Well, it's anywhere from about 10% up to about 25%. And yes, there's exceptions. The expensive areas in San Mateo County, where almost 40% of the sellers are taking price reductions. The coast, it's almost surprising that only 25% of the sellers are taking a price reduction, even though they have something like 236 days of unsold inventory. But you can see the numbers. The Alameda County areas are faster, right around 10% of the sellers doing a price reduction, a little higher in Pleasanton and Oakland. But it's going to vary from area to area. And that's why, to me, it's important to look at the micro markets. And then within the micro markets, you want to get down to the CMA level. But the CMA level just tells you what's happening right now today. There's no way to track each house and the activity level that each house would experience. And that's why I settle on micro markets. I believe that the county data is good to give you an overview, and the regional is also valuable. The most valuable out of the 3 sets, regional, county, or micro market, is the micro market areas, because they vary so dramatically within a county. Here is the overbid magnitude. So this is what buyers are coming in and overbidding. And now you do have some areas that are negative. You have the San Mateo County coast and the expensive areas, both at exactly negative 1.8%. Foster City was surprising that even though it's fast, the overbidding is down by almost a full percentage point. But one of the things you have to remember is the speed of the market is now, the overbidding is 5 weeks ago. So the two do not have to be in sync. And that was one of the reasons I started looking at price reductions, is to get an idea of what's happening in the marketplace right now without needing to wait for escrow to close to get that sale price. Here's the frequency of overbidding. And this is a very lagging indicator. In other words, buyers continue to overbid, but the amount of their overbidding becomes smaller and smaller, and the magnitude is more responsive to changes in the marketplace, where the frequency lags behind, because going from a 10% overbid down to a 2% overbid is a huge shift in the marketplace, but both of them count as an overbid. In a nutshell, in Santa Clara County, you're basically anywhere from 40% to 3/4 of the sellers are getting overbid. In San Mateo County, you're basically from a third to 50%. In Alameda County, you're all the way up to 80% in Berkeley and Oakland, but in general, you're between 50 and 67%. Here's the appreciation for the different areas since 2015. Pretty significant, but there's also areas like the Bay Cities. It's sort of surprising to see that's at 24%, and that's going to be areas like San Carlos, Belmont, Burlingame, San Mateo. But right next to them, Redwood City is at 57%. So a huge difference just in areas that a lot of people would say are very similar in a lot of ways. Yes, the Bay Cities are slightly more expensive, or historically were more expensive than Redwood City, and Redwood City has been on fire. But to see that kind of change in appreciation rate is pretty startling. You can see that some of your higher appreciations are the moderately affordable and the affordable areas of Santa Clara County, 75 to 80%. You're also seeing that over in Alameda County. The sort of the job center core is quite a bit lower, with Los Altos, Palo Alto only at 10% appreciation since 2015. And one of the things you have to be a little bit careful of, these are accurate numbers for appreciation, but that's measured on the median sold price. I'm not worried about the sold price of my benchmark because I used 9 months in 2015 in a period of time when the prices were fairly stable. And with using 9 months, there's a lot of inventory. So you're going to, large data sets. So you're going to get a fairly representative sample size. What I would be concerned about is the data today, because you're only getting the current data, and with the low level of offers accepted, you don't have as many closings. When you see a number outlying like this at only 10% appreciation in Los Altos, Palo Alto, that's probably not the amount of appreciation they've really sensed, even though that is when you compare median price. Probably what's happening is lower priced homes are selling now in Los Altos and Palo Alto. So the median price right now is artificially low compared to where it normally is. And there's really no easy way to do that unless you start doing paired sale comparisons, which is challenging and time consuming. Now, instead of just following the median sold price, which is the middle number, I've sandwiched that by the 10 percentile, the least expensive homes you expect to find, as well as the 90 percentile, the most expensive homes you would be expected to sell. In Cupertino, for example, the price range for single family homes is essentially 2.1 to $3.6 million, with the median price being 2.6. One of the things that I always find interesting is the first 40% is in a $550,000 range from 2.1 to 2.650. But then you have to add in $900,000, more than double or exactly double the price increase to get the next 40%. And that's just the way the bell-shaped curve is for real estate. It tends to be from the low end to the median, and then from the median to the high end is a lot more spread out. You have a larger spread, and you'll see that consistently, whether it be the most expensive areas here in San Mateo County, where you're going from 2.4% to 4.4. So a $2 million range for the first 40%, and then 4.5 million to 16 million for the second 40%. Now what we're looking at is Silicon Valley, all in a blender, all three counties, what's going on. And the purple line is inventory. So we have 88% of the inventory that we typically do. And you can see how the inventory has been growing rapidly through here. And then the number of offers is at 72%. In a nutshell, in my opinion, this is a clear indication that we have not been limited in our number of offers, like many people said, by the limited number of listings, because your listings available have gone from something like 55% to 88%, a 35% increase in the number of inventory available, and your level of activity has stayed essentially constant. What has changed is the DUI. The DUI is going up because now you have more inventory with the same number of sales. So you're having a slower marketplace. And we went from a faster than normal marketplace because you're below 100% to a cooler than normal marketplace because you're at 110%. And the larger the number of DUI is, the slower the market is. Basically, the takeaway is the bottom line here. And right now, we sold 1,277 homes in the last 5 weeks. Our record low for the last 25 years was 1,268. This year will most likely turn in to be a record low year. And the reason I say that is this 1268, the transactions have all had time to fall apart that were going to fall apart, and 1268 would be a fairly representative number of the number that would have actually recorded. This 1277 is the first week. Next week, it tends to go up a little bit, but after that, it drops, and it goes up because of late reporting. And then after that, it starts dropping down. And a prime example of this is we go back up here to November 8th, and now we're exactly tied for last year, which was the record low. We probably even last week, and I don't remember seeing it, but a week, 2 weeks ago, this year's number would have been higher. The other number that's getting pretty close down here is 1420 versus 1403. I'm pretty confident this 1420 will start dropping and will most likely end up lower than this 1403. 1356 versus 1347. You'd say that's closer. This was the week it increased. So next week I start expecting to drop. And again, I think it's going to go down. We are still basically having very close to the lowest number of offers accepted out of the last 25 years. And I personally believe that is noteworthy. Now we're looking at monthly payments. This is a lot of this is driven by the interest rates, but you can see how dramatically the price and interest rates have driven down price of the monthly mortgage payment just in the last month in all price points. That is encouraging, and that should bring buyers back into the marketplace, especially the buyers that are aware that this is happening. A lot of people don't look at what's going on with the payment. They focused on price. And to me, payment that people are paying is far greater. And this assumes an 80% loan. It assumes, jumbo 80% loan based on the Federal Reserve Bank for the nation. So you can do better than this, which would be lower payments, but it does give you a representative sample. Here is something that is fairly unique for as far as I'm aware of. I don't know of anybody else that's tracking this, but this is a weekly distribution of the ask price reductions. The way you read this, the purple is the current line, so 5% of the sellers are taking 11% price reduction. 10% of the sellers are taking about a 7.5%, almost 6% price reduction. 15% of the sellers are taking a 4% price reduction. And what we're going to do is we're going to take representative weeks spaced roughly a month apart, which means 4 or 5 weeks apart initially. And we'll be doing that from roughly a year ago through 3 months ago. And 3 months ago is exactly 13 weeks. And at 13 weeks, we shift over and look at every week. And so here you're starting off. Now you have the huge run up last year. There's sort of the record high. Now you come down and you had this long plateau. And then just in the last few weeks, starting about 9 weeks ago, there's been sort of a steady march down, and we're sort of hitting a plateau now for the holidays. I still expect it to go down a little bit more, but it's nowhere near where it was last year. Last year, at this time, it would have been this dotted line way down here. Well, in 1 week last year on the 20th. And when you see, because you'll notice the green line is labeled the 20th of 2023, and we're not there. Because I use a real estate fiscal year or a real estate year that starts on March 1st and then goes forward 7 days at a time. And the reason I picked March 1st is there's a 1 extra day in a normal year. In leap year, there's 2 extra years. And by using a March 1st start point instead of January 1st, I only have 1 discontinuity. So I jump either 8 or 9 days in February from being, if it was 8 days from February 21st to March 1st. In a leap year, I'm going to jump from February 20th to March 1st. So you do 1 jump, and then you calculate the first week by the first full week of the new year. It's a little bit more detail. But the thing that this does is it shows you the market's going up and down, and the market definitely did come down from about 9, 10 weeks ago, and we've sort of stabilized. And I expect a little bit of downward pressure, but not much. Now we're flipping over and looking at the same thing from the overbid point of view. Now we have to wait for escrows to close. Even when we're looking at today's data, we're looking at data where the market was 5 weeks ago. This is a year ago, and that's about the bottom of the marketplace. There's the run up in spring. There's your peak. And now you sort of hit a plateau and you're just really bouncing around a little bit and not really moving. Now you're starting to move down just slightly right there. For the last couple weeks, you started to move down, and that's because 3 weeks ago, which is about when the movement happened, plus 5 is 8 weeks ago, which corresponds to right about when the frequency of price reductions started to change, and that's about when the market changed. So that's how you read this data. You know, the change in sale price is far more accurate for reading changes in the market than changes in the sale price. So it surprises me more people aren't tracking the list price distribution. Now we're going to focus on Silicon Valley, the active inventory. You're going to have in the next series of slides, we're going to focus on Silicon Valley, which is going to be the purple data. But the red line is going to be the hot marketplace, the hottest you'd expect the market to place to be. The gray line is where you'd expect the market to be, and that's based on 10 years. And the blue line is the coolest you'd expect the market to be. Right now, you're over here at 1,302 listings available, which is pretty close to the least amount that you'd expect to have. Now you're looking at offers, and your offers are at 1,277, so they're actually below by 5 units of the least you'd expect it to be. So again, you're really starting to see the lack of offers. Here's your days of unsold inventory. We're actually now above the gray lines where you'd expect the market to be at 32, and you're actually at 36. So you're a little, what is that, about 12% above where you'd expect the market to be. So you're 12% slower, 10.2% slower according to my graph. If you were having a completely normal year, you'd be right on the black line. Below the black line is a hotter marketplace. Above the black line is a cooler marketplace. Here's that long typical seller that's successful. Here, even though the marketplace is a little slower based on DUI, which doesn't have a lag time, it's more instantaneous. So that's really a more valid number. This one's easier for the layperson to understand, I find. And basically, the seller now is taking 25 days to get his home sold. Typically, at this time of the year, based on the past 10 years, it would be at 36 days. So we're still quite a bit faster than you'd expect, but we have been slowing down. And if it's a lagging indicator, every indication is that would continue to slow down. And here you can see it's 70% of normal. Even though it's slowing down, it's still faster than normal. Right here at 25 days, you're normally at 36. Clearly, it's faster by what, almost 11 days, almost a week and a half. And that's why this is down at 70 days. And you can see it's sort of holding steady. Even though it's increasing, it's not increasing any faster than it typically does at this time of the year. And that's important to do, is look at the rate of change. And that's really what these graphs are sort of designed to do. Is one is you can look at the relativeness, like for example, this data set, which is the seller's ask price reductions, is between a typical marketplace and a cool marketplace. That means sellers are taking a greater price reductions right now than they typically are. They're typically at 99%. They're taking 0.4% more. And even in a hot marketplace, they're still taking a 10% price reduction. But then what you also want to do is look at the rate of change. For example, it changed rapidly right here, and we can sort of count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 weeks ago, it was changing rapidly because it was basically right on the gray line, moving rapidly to the blue line. And now we're basically plateauing and we're moving roughly with the gray typical line. It's now behaving normal, even though it's behaving normally at a slower pace. Maybe this is a better example. Look how fast you went from the gray line to almost the blue line, and now you're following sort of the pattern, but down closer to the blue line. And this is the 10% of the sellers that are taking the biggest price reduction. How much price reduction are they taking? So 10% of your sellers are taking that 15% price reduction is basically what this is saying. And normally they're only taking about a 10% price reduction. A 50% increase in the price reduction of the 10 percentile seller. And here the 10 percentile seller is now taking a 31% price reduction increase compared to normal. Frequency of price reductions is basically right where you'd expect it to be. There's really no difference between 18.7 being where we are today and the typical 18.8 that you'd expect it to be. And here you can see it 97.8%. You can see it's right there. Here's your average overbid magnitude. So this is the buyers. How much are they overbidding? So this is including those that bid under the asking price and get their offer accepted, as well as those that overbid. Typical is basically 104%, 103.9. What we're at right now is 104.3. So very similar. You can see that we were getting less overbids at the latter part of 2022 and in the early part of 2023. Then we were getting overbids right at the level of expectation through first quarter. We crossed over into second quarter, and after a couple weeks, all of a sudden we changed rapidly from being right at the blue line, the least overbidding you'd expect, to typical overbidding. And then in the third quarter, we basically plateaued, even though it normally cools off, which then put us between the typical and a hot marketplace. And now we're losing that and getting back to a typical marketplace. And it's also noteworthy going back here for the 2022 slowdown. Here you were on April the 1st, way up here. And then by August 1st, you're way down here on the amount of overbidding. So dramatic change in the marketplace. And we all remember how that happened. Here's the frequency of overbidding, very comparable at 57.2% to the 56.7 you'd expect it to be. And here's your price for all of Silicon Valley's 3 counties in the blender. We're down to 1.450, and you can see you're doing the typical down at the end of every year. And it's my contention that a lot of this decrease is because smaller homes sell. Homes in more expensive areas tended to make up a smaller part of the market share as we get close to holidays. Real estate is an optional event, and those people that have wealth are more into holidays than the person that's struggling to just survive, and the holidays are not as significantly impacting their free time, so they have more time to go and look at houses, and therefore smaller homes sell. Here's your active inventory in the 3 counties. So now we're looking at the 3 counties. You have the smallest county being San Mateo County, and right now Santa Clara County is next with only 478 listings, and Alameda County is at 540 listings. Here's the number of offers accepted. It's basically the exact same order. DUI, you now don't have to worry about the size of the counties, and you can see that Santa Clara County is slightly outperforming Alameda County at 33.7 versus 35.7, and San Mateo County is the slowest at 39.6. This is the long typical seller. Again, Santa Clara County is doing the best at 27, Alameda next at 36, and San Mateo County third place at 44 days. Frequency of seller price reductions, San Mateo County is taking the most at 98%. Santa Clara and Alameda County are identical at 98.8%. So sellers are only taking a 1.2% price reduction on average. And some buyers might go, what do you mean sellers are taking a price reduction? The only thing I see is overbidding. Well, there are prices that drop $100,000, which is a significant price reduction, and then they sell for over that asking price, which is $100,000 reduced, and that counts as an overbid. So the frequency of overbidding is most common in San Mateo County. Santa Clara County comes in second place at 17.1, and Alameda County has the least frequent price reductions at 16.7. And that's reversed from what we were seeing with Santa Clara and Alameda County. Here's your overbidding magnitude on average. So it's everybody in a blender. And Alameda County is way outperforming Santa Clara County with a 6% overbidding. Santa Clara County is only at 3% overbidding. and San Mateo County is at 2% overbidding. The frequency of overbidding, San Mateo is the least, Santa Clara second, and Alameda County is coming in top. So it's sort of interesting. Alameda County is doing best on the overbids aspect right now, but that's also where the market was 5 weeks ago, where when you look at days on marketplace, days on sold inventory, those kinds of benchmarks, Santa Clara County is in second place. So not always the exact same ratio you'd expect. On appreciation, San Mateo County is the least, and I believe that's related to the pandemic. Alameda County is second place, and Santa Clara County has the most appreciation since 2015 at almost 76% appreciation. That was up to 88% appreciation, and back in 2022, it was all the way up over 200%. What that's telling me is that you're comparing both these numbers to 9 months of 2015, the prices now in Santa Clara County are not as high as they were at the peak of the marketplace. Here is that same data, a different way to look at it. Here is your sale price on log paper. San Mateo County is the orange, and you can see that this is where we are now, and you can see that for a good part of 2021 and 2022, prices were higher than they are right now. But you are comparing the low time of the year. If you came back and compared the low time of the year of 2022, it was lower. The low time of 2021, it was just a little bit higher, and the low time of 2020, it was lower. When you compare apples and apples, right now, there's not as much difference. And if you go back just a couple weeks ago, the line was up here, and the number of people upside down was quite a bit smaller. And the reason I guess I'm pointing this out a little bit, there was an article that Redfin put out about the two areas in the Bay Area that were doing the worst in the nation, and they were San Mateo County and San Francisco County, and it was based on the number of sellers that were upside down. And if you have a graph like this, you have a lot of sellers upside down, but if you just go back a couple weeks, and the lines up here, you have dramatically fewer number of sellers that are upside down. You know, in Alameda County, for example, the same trend would happen, but it's not as a dramatic as a shift. The blue is Santa Clara County, and of course, the Alameda is the gray, the most affordable. And again, it's just to show you the horizontal line shows you where you have to go back to be constantly above. So you basically have to come back here to sometime in early 2021, and all times earlier than that, prices are higher now. Subsequent to, say, second quarter of 2021, it depends on when you're looking at what comparison you're doing to see if there's appreciation. Exactly the same information on regular paper for those that prefer. Here's those fixed payments on the payments, and they're coming down fairly significantly, as you can see. And I'm a little surprised the payments are only off by $100, but they are close together on price, but that seems like more than $100 differential to me, but I would trust my math. Here's actually the numbers by the 3 counties. You can look at your favorite county, you can look at Silicon Valley as a whole, and you can look at whatever metric it is that you feel is most important for your decision-making process. With that, we leave Silicon Valley. Now we go into the greater Bay Area, which is comprised of 5 regions. One of those regions is Silicon Valley, so we're not completely ignoring Silicon Valley. The second one is San Francisco and Marin, the North Bay, the Central Valley, and the Central Coast. Here are the numbers for these 5 regions. And when you look at it, the regions are over here, but I also did, so the individual counties and the region, and then like in for the others, I didn't do grouping since it was going to be just too much data, but I did group the 9 Bay Area counties. And the reason I did that is an awful lot of media reporting is on what the Bay Area real estate market's doing. And that's this hybrid of these 9 Bay Area counties. And that can be completely different than what's happening in your county, especially if you're in Silicon Valley looking at either Santa Clara County or Alameda right now being the hot spots. San Mateo might be more reflective of what the Bay Area is doing. Here you can see the huge shift down in inventory in all regions. You can pick your region and decide what's the most. Purple is Silicon Valley. The key code's up on the top. Orange is San Francisco Marin. You can see how much San Francisco Marin's dropped down just recently in the number of active listings. But, or maybe a better way to say it is look how constant the Central Coast is, because pretty much every other region is dropping down fairly significantly. Here's the number of offers. The number of offers is going up in the Central Valley and in the North Bay, which is sort of interesting, dropping like a rock in Silicon Valley like it normally does, and dropping in the cities and in the Central Coast. A little divergence with the two affordable regions actually increasing in the number of offers in the past 5 weeks. Days of unsold inventory here, everybody's going down. But look at the drop that the Marin in San Francisco has gone. So they not too long ago, they were up here at 120 days, and now they're down at 48. That's the biggest drop out of the 5 regions. Silicon Valley is the fastest at 36. You can see it slow down, and now it's improved slightly. Basically, long term, that might be a plateau. But look at something like Central Valley. It slowed down fairly dramatically, and now it's improving. Here's your long time on the marketplace for your typical seller. You can pick whatever region. Silicon Valley is in the purple at 25 days. We have 2 regions here at exactly 48. That would be the cities and the North Bay. The slowest is the Central Coast, and the Central Valley is in second place at 33 days. This is the price reductions. How much are on average of the price reductions? So they're fairly small. But you can see that the San Francisco is taking a 3.6% price reduction, Central Coast 3.2%, North Bay is taking a 2.5% price reduction, Central Valley is taking 1.7%, and Silicon Valley is only taking a 1.4% price reduction. And again, this is all the sellers in a blender in each one of those regions, so it includes those that are getting overbid as well as underbid. This is the frequency of sellers taking price reductions. You can see Silicon Valley is a real standout with less than 20% of the sellers doing a price reduction. Everybody else is at 32 to 37%. So they're all clustered together at around 33% of the sellers doing a price reduction, 1/3. And in Silicon Valley, it's only 1/5 of the sellers doing a price reduction. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? You can see in Silicon Valley that 57% of the sellers get overbidding, but in the Central Coast, it's less, it's just basically 30%. Your other 3 regions are just under 50%. Tight cluster, the clusters change. The magnitude of the cluster changes. Total appreciation, the cities is doing terrible down at under 40% appreciation. The Central Valley is doing the most at 81% appreciation. And then Silicon Valley, Central Coast, and North Bays are pretty close together, between 55% and 65% appreciation, rough numbers. Sold price sort of where you expect it to be, with the cities being on top, Silicon Valley not far behind. Then you have Central Coast, North Bay, and the most affordable out there in the Central Valley. The corresponding payments, and you can see all the payments are coming down, and that's directly related to mostly the interest rates coming down. And with that, we're finished. The green is what I call my root URL. That it gets you the YouTube archive. If you add in 2023 at the end, you get to the live presentation Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. If you add in H for handout, 2023 12/16 month date code, you get the handout. It is up, it's 58 slides. I don't do the incremental slides on the overbid and the list price reductions, but other than that, you pretty much get every slide. And the reason I don't include them, all the information is on the current data, which is included, and the only thing that changing on that slide is which line is bolded. And I didn't think that was, you can study it more when it's in front of you. And if you want any specific episode, you type in the year, month, date code after the URL, the root URL. I'm Richard Calhoun of Creekside Realty, working with buyers or sellers in Silicon Valley for the last 40 years. And we're ready to answer any questions you might have. Not seeing any unmuted mics. Have a nice week. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.